And what's up, everybody? Welcome in GC Live Tuesday episode of the show presented by Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, ClintHammond.com. 803-771 is how you can get it. 803-771-6933 is how you can get in touch with Clint. And as we tell you every single day on the show, if you're in the market to maybe buy a new home or maybe you just want to see what options you have out there for, maybe to save yourself some money with a refinance, give Clint a shout. His NMLS number is 71597. He is the branch manager right here in Columbia at the Columbia Mortgage Network, right across from Dreher High School. Again, 803-771-6933. Clint will definitely take care of you if that's something that you're in the market for. Welcome in. As normally on Tuesday during the season, we're a little bit later than normal just because this is press conference day. Shane Beamer, of course, speaking to preview the Georgia game. And, like I told y'all last week, as far as our content on Gamecock Central, we will continue to have stuff looking back a bit at the game at East Carolina, probably into Wednesday, sometimes even early Thursday. But as far as South Carolina goes, Georgia week really officially begins on Tuesday. The guys have Monday off. That's sort of – I look at Monday, Chris, as being like a reset day. Sunday is sort of like a day for the players to – try and fix what went wrong the day before. You go ahead and get that in there while it's fresh, and it's sort of a teach day, a day for younger guys. Monday is an off day, and Tuesday is really when they dive into Georgia or whatever the next opponent is. So Tuesday presser has come and gone. Shane Beamer previewing Georgia earlier today, and I want to get into Beamer's comments on Georgia here shortly, Chris. But first of all, the latest on Luke Doty. Once again, it seems like this is probably 3 in a row now where we've been talking on Tuesday about Doty's progress towards possibly getting back. And Beamer's saying today that basically he did more this week. He did more today than he did last Tuesday. But then last Tuesday, some soreness popped up. They didn't really want to push it on Saturday and put him in the ball game. Sounds like Doty is inching ever closer to a return to the field for South Carolina.
It is. And Wes, the vibe I get, and first of all, a lot of people I've noticed on the Insiders Forum, they're wanting us to give a percentage or maybe an answer, just really the latest on Doty. Is he going to play? And this was even before the press conference earlier today here on Tuesday. I don't know that we know that. Is that fair to say, Wes? I mean, we can't sit here and say, definitely yes, definitely no. Is he getting closer? For sure, right? And that's because of the progress he's made. We're going to continue checking on it, reporting on it throughout the week, and we'll see what comes out Thursday, Friday, whatever day, Saturday morning. But it seems to me like, the big factors right now for Luke Doty are, soreness was an issue, obviously, leading up to ECU. But Shane Beamer has used this phrase multiple times, knocking the rust off. So he's gone through a prolonged period of practice as the season began and leading up to the season where he wasn't able to practice. There was many days where he couldn't do anything as he was in the boot. Once he got out of it, it was about getting reacclimated, doing more and more in practice. And so, managing the pain, the soreness, which has all gotten better. But now it's about being able to get out practice, be fully acclimated into practice, and then are you ready, right? Because it's not just a guy's healthy, put him out there. It's not always that simple, particularly at a position like quarterback for a guy in Luke who still, I think we forget, is still not even relatively. He's a very inexperienced player still, right? So I think that those are a couple of the big factors to look at is not even just, okay, what's his health as far as how is the foot? It's soreness and it's being actually ready to play, and that's something that's being kind of constantly assessed here.
Well, he is very young in his football development too as well. And I think, Chris, sometimes we see these guys who have been playing, quarterback their entire life. They started since they were like freshmen in high school, and even not that high school experience necessarily equates to college experience, but I think it's relevant to this conversation that this is a kid who as a sophomore in high school played quite a bit of wide receiver just to get him, get his athleticism on the field. So I think important to remember he's still going to continue to get better, but you have to sort of be smart about how you progress him. And man, I mean, this is not a guy. If this was a guy who was maybe a statue in the pocket in the first place, I don't know. Maybe it's not even, depending on exactly how the injury felt, maybe it's not as big of a deal. But we all know Luke's legs are a massive part of what he brings to the table. And, for South Carolina, they don't want to put him in a position to get in there and take hits when basically it's a situation where he could have gotten out of the pocket otherwise. So that soreness is very, very real. I think that he had last week. So you got to be very, very smart about managing that situation. Did you notice towards the end of the Doty comment, actually to our own Colin Taylor, who was getting in on the Doty question parade, he being Shane Beamer, brought up Zeb Noland and said, hey, Zeb Noland made some big time throws late in this game. Anytime a coach attaches that on there, Chris, it's with reason.
I noticed that, and I was going to bring it up. There was no question about Zeb Noland or the offense or anything like that. It was kind of discussing Luke and his health and his readiness, his potential readiness, and said, yeah, but Zeb Noland made some big time throws at the end there against TCU. So, yeah, I think there's kind of some dual reasoning, I think, for that, Wes. It's to give Zeb, his credit, but also I think it's to, prepare people for the fact that we don't know yet quite what's going to happen. And so even though that, Beamer has said they anticipate Luke being 100% going into the game, again, I go back to what I said earlier. It's not just about can he play, right? It's how ready is a guy to play, not just from a soreness standpoint, but from a mental, physical standpoint, from practice reps and all that leading up to a week for a very, very tough opponent. Where is he with all that by the week's end? And so Beamer, I think, giving a little bit of a reminder there, whether it was, I do think there was intention to it, Wes, but just to kind of attach that to keep it in people's minds that Zeb Noland started the first couple games, and certainly could be possible that he starts, whatever it may be, on Saturday too. So we'll just have to see where it goes from there.
Yeah, Beamer, very, very, as you would expect. His praise for Georgia, it was strong. It was strong. And we've seen Shane Beamer, and this is part of the learning experience, I think, for us as well. What's Beamer going to be like on a game week? What's he going to be like on a game day as far as sideline demeanor? What's he like each preview press conference? That's part of it. He's definitely in the I'm going to lay it on pretty thick with praise for the opponent. I'm going to find something to praise. In this game, though, Chris, he did not have to look far at all to find examples of things to praise. I mean, if you look at the way Georgia has recruited and just sort of look at the makeup of this roster, I mean, I'm sure you'll have the Star Power article. Have you glanced at that yet? Because that'll be something to get into tomorrow, I guess. But the Star Power on this one is going to be over the top, man. Because this is a Georgia team that top to bottom. If you just look at sort of, I always call it stacking classes. If you look at how they've stacked classes, then it's right up there with anybody. And in fact, depending on what rankings you use, whether you use Rivals or 24/7 or whoever, depending on which ones you use, Chris, they may actually have more true 5-star, like former 5-star rated guys than maybe even Alabama. I know Alabama, if you look at like the sort of do you buy in, and I do, sort of this like the blue chip idea of like the percentage of players on a team that are former blue chips out of high school. And Alabama, if you're talking 4-star and 5-star, is pretty much number one, I think, most years. But Georgia, if you're just looking at 5 stars, is right up there with anybody in the country, depending on which ranking systems you use. So Beamer's saying this is the most talented I think he says the most talented Georgia team of all time, which they do have a national title under their belt, so that's a big sentence. But man, the talent level on this team, there's a reason they're number 2 in the country.
Well, and they've got they've got 4-star guys, even 5-star guys. Like if you look at Brock Vandegrift, really might be 3rd, 4th on the depth chart. He was a former 5-star quarterback, but they've got guys that are 3rd string West that are former highly recruited 4-star guys. So yeah, I've kind of glanced at it. I think it would be even more. It's going to be eye popping when Star Power comes out this week. With just, wow, look at the starters, mostly going to be 4-star and 5-star guys. Would be even more eye-opening if we expanded that out of, okay, now let's do the second team, right? Like Shane Beamer mentioned, there are guys that weren't even on Georgia's 2 deep that have been out there the first couple weeks making plays, so and that's without, they've been a little shorthanded. JT Daniels was a former highly recruited guy, missed last week. Darnell Washington, a former 5-star tight end, has been out. Tyke Smith, that was one of their big-time transfers in the offseason in the secondary. He's been out. So, no, but they're loaded at a lot of different spots, and it's not just one you point to. It's, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, Channing Tindall, Wes, who was – he was a guy that a bunch of programs, regionally and nationally wanted. And what did he play against Clemson? 11 snaps. He was the guy everybody was talking about after the game. 41 was a nightmare for Clemson. He played 11 snaps, for this team. So tons of depth, tons of talent, and certainly a tall order for the Gamecocks in that regard, and effusive praise from Shane Beamer today.
Yeah, and rightfully so, man. It's obvious. Beamer was talking about how all he heard about was the secondary was an issue for them. And then you look out there and there's just talent across the board. The depth is everywhere. And, let's be honest, nobody on this show probably wants to hear it or see it, but that's ultimately what you're trying to get to if you're South Carolina. It's that this is a team that doesn't just, as you said, have the talent with the starters. It's if you lose a guy, pretty much at about any position, that means you're not going to wreck your season just where you're just like sitting there praying. Even some of those really great South Carolina teams where they're not certain positions where you're just like, South Carolina fans are like, don't let it hit this spot. Don't let it, because you just don't have that depth across the board. Georgia, one of the few handful of teams in the country right now that has that depth pretty much across the board in this game, and Beamer was obviously effusive with his praise for the program, for Kirby, for how they operate, for pretty much everything, which you'd expect nothing less. But I think in this case, where you go back the Eastern Illinois game, where you sort of going into Lou Holtz mode a little bit, if you're Beamer, finding things to sort of praise them on. With Georgia, to me, it was just. I think it was actually more factual, as over the top as it was. I think that's just who Georgia is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He even said that he's like best Georgia team ever. And I'm not, just saying that. Look, there aren't many holes on this team. It's kind of like we were talking the other day about it, Wes, and, it was mentioned to us, maybe, Georgia's running game hasn't been as good as people expected it to be. And it's like, wow, we're really splitting hairs here. If that's what you're talking about as the weakness. Same thing with the secondary. The secondary, maybe not that great. Darion Kendrick, former 5-star, Clemson transfer is one of their starters.
We're all very familiar with him.
We're very familiar with him. Christopher Smith, who was a guy that South Carolina recruited under Will Muschamp and had the pick 6 against Clemson. So, just loaded with 4- and 5-star guys, even back there, even if they don't have Tyke Smith, even if they have a few depth issues or it's a question, this is still a team that there would not be. How many college programs / coaches would not trade rosters with Georgia? There'd be a bunch of coaches that would say, I would not trade my roster for that team. But in reality, 1, 2, maybe just in terms of raw talent depth on the roster. So it's, again, that's why we've talked so much about this being a tall order. Just not many holes, on this Georgia roster, and that's why I've heard so much praise.
No doubt. JT Daniels, we had somebody ask who's going to be the starting quarterback for Georgia this week. Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong. And if Kirby is anything like, like Muschamp and sort of the Saban coaching tree, we probably ain't going to know until Saturday. The headlines I saw, so Kirby speaks on Mondays as opposed to, South Carolina does the Tuesday press conference. It's still up in the air, right? Is that what you got? Have you heard anything differently than that? I mean, it sounds like similarly to South Carolina and Doty, obviously a little different scenario as far as their experience, but with Daniels, they're going to sort of push him a little bit and see where it is this week.
Yeah, and for some context, Daniels, it was a situation where he's kind of playing through that what was it, an oblique injury, I think, Wes.
Yep.
And was playing through it and practicing through it a little bit at first and became very, very painful. And so it sounds like it's kind of a very painful thing that he's been dealing with. So kind of more of a day-to-day thing. I think you're right. We might not know until whoever trots out there on Saturday. If it's Stetson Bennett, it's not like anybody's going to say, here's our opening. I mean, it's still going to be tough given all the things, but JT Daniels is a starter. It is a storyline to watch, but I don't think we have a great answer for it yet. And certainly this week we'll be checking in with some of our Georgia folks to see what the latest is. Maybe Wednesday, Thursday might have a better sense of that. So both teams with some questions there at quarterback.
Yeah, I'll throw a quote at you. This is from Kirby Smart yesterday. I don't know any more than I knew Saturday night. He's been in treatment twice, and Ron, I believe that's probably their head athletic trainer, Ron says he's certainly improved. He threw the ball in warm-ups Saturday more than he threw the ball all last week. So he was better then than he was the previous days. I'll know a little bit more after practice yesterday, in terms of his ability to move around and throw the ball. I know he's been in treatment twice, and from the update, he has definitely improved. So, yeah, wait and see. We shall see. I imagine much like here as the week goes on, our Georgia folks will start to get an idea of which way it is leaning, what the expectation is. Much like last week, as the week went on, it sounded more and more stronger that Zeb Noland would get the start at ECU for South Carolina. This week, I think we'll have a much better feel again. Probably Wednesday, Thursday is when I sort of start to see that information leak out a little bit. And I imagine pretty similar at Georgia, although they are known as being one of the tightest, it's like trying to get information out of the Pentagon, apparently, to see any of Georgia's practice or get any information out over there. So we shall see. I mean, does that play a factor in the game? Yes. Is it, again, like Chris said, is it some huge opening? I mean, the thing about there is, JT Daniels to me is a little bit more dynamic of a quarterback. Stetson Bennett is he's the guy that's going to go out there and just know where the ball is supposed to go, get the job done. You don't have to quite worry about a guy that's going to be able to make all the big-time throws and is just going to kill you in the passing game. He's more of a manager of the game. Even though he's, with the talent around him, Chris, he has managed to put up some nice stats in his time playing quarterback. I think did he have 5 touchdowns and a half? I mean, that's I think an all-time Georgia record. So it gets a little bit easier, but is it enough to matter, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, very true. And I think that's what you have to look at, no matter who's at quarterback for Georgia. I don't want to completely discount it. It definitely is something. We saw the last time South Carolina went down, to Athens and won very unexpectedly, right? Not saying history is going to repeat itself, but that was a very unexpected win. A big reason for that was the quarterback play that day by then Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm. He had some struggles, right? That wasn't all him. Javon Kinlaw harassed him into throwing one ball that went errant. Kwame Pickstoff runs it back, pick 6. Another one went off of a Georgia receiver's shoulder pads, right? So there were some interceptions and some turnovers and a lot of different things that went wrong for Georgia that day. So quarterback matters in that if you're playing a guy and he's making a lot of mistakes, that really is the recipe for South Carolina, because if we're just being honest, I mean, this is a mismatch from a talent standpoint, and that's going to be the case with anybody that Georgia plays this year. Just about, maybe they end up meeting up with Alabama. SEC title games is probably what people expect. Maybe not then. Maybe that's more of an even match. But an on-paper talent perspective, they're going to be a mismatch against about anybody. But it's about who plays the best on any given Saturday. And so when you look at, key to the game for South Carolina, it's obviously going to be turnover margin is the number one. That can be the great equalizer, in games like this. So, that's why we look at this quarterback situation and look at it with so much interest, because if a guy does happen to struggle, they've got other guys they can put in there. Carson Beck, at Georgia, was a guy that people thought may end up getting the start in the absence of JT Daniels. He didn't. They ended up going with Bennett, but it is something to watch.
So, did you, by the way, Chris and I were handling some things. Did you get a chance to listen to most of the press conference, Chris?
I did. I got to listen to it on the way back home, so I listened to just about every moment of it.
Okay, good. I missed some parts of it, and then I was writing up the injury update during part of it. But and by the way, as far as other injuries, knock on wood if you're a Gamecock fan, South Carolina I don't even know if I should say relatively healthy. Like, they're pretty darn healthy to be going into week 3. Somebody asked earlier about Rick Sandage. He is still out dealing with that lower leg injury. It was kind of clear, I think, from when that happened, that was going to be something that kept him out for a little bit. Not a season-ending deal, it sounds like, but certainly something that was going to make him miss some time. Otherwise, I mean, they've had guys banged up, bumps, bruises. You have that. That's football. But South Carolina, really healthy going into this game. Injury report really pretty much completely just was about Doty, and then a quick update on Sandage that he's still out this week. Was there anything else, Chris, other than, like we talked about, the quarterback position, the big praise for Georgia? I'll be curious to see what comes out of the coordinator press conferences tomorrow. Those have been very intriguing to me the first couple of weeks. But what was there anything else that just caught your attention today?
I think one thing was talking about offensive line. Beamer got, a little as fired up as he's going to get in a setting like that about the offensive line. And I think what Beamer does, like you were talking about this earlier, kind of the personalities and how he's going to kind of conduct business in the press conference. And Beamer has been very upfront about what needs to improve, right? And taking responsibility, which I think a lot of fans appreciate. A coach saying this or that is on me, or we got to coach better. Those types of things. Fans just tend to appreciate those things. He pointed out, though, with the offensive line, this is a point that we try to make a lot. When the run game is struggling, or even in pass protection, most people are going to immediately say the O-line stinks. And that's the sole first cause of the problems. In reality, a lot of times it's kind of more complex than that. And so does the offensive line need to play better? Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt, whether it's one-on-one pass protection, some run blocking, things like that. But what Beamer pointed out there, Wes, was sometimes in pass protection, if, for instance, somebody goes right by a tackle and it looks like a big whiff, that might be because the quarterback slid protection a certain way. He's trying to guess a certain stun or a certain blitz, guessed wrong in moving the protection, and the tackle's actually doing what he was supposed to do on the play, right? So then that goes to more scheming or the quarterback, things like that. So I thought that's maybe not a point that a lot of people find interesting. I found it interesting that he did bring it up, because a lot of what we've seen, and we touched on this yesterday, Wes, a lot of what we've seen in the running game, there's different aspects to it. Sometimes the back didn't hit the right hole. Sometimes they don't have the right play on. Sometimes maybe they need to diversify the run more. Sometimes a guy does get whipped on a block. But it's not only, okay, the O-line's the only unit not doing their job here. So he did talk about that a little bit. I thought that was a little bit of an interesting note.
And I almost felt like I knew exactly which play he was talking about when he was referencing that, because there were a couple of plays that looked just like that, where the tackle took a guy to his left and just let somebody run free, and you're sitting there. If you don't know the call, you may be going, "What was that?" And Beamer, you could tell he was very what's the word, diplomatic, maybe. Like he's like PFF. He's like, now we use PFF too, but it's not. And I think we've had sort of similar comments. We have access to PFF. We publish stuff from PFF. It is not the end all be all.
Right.
It is a nice resource. And teams in the NFL use PFF. Teams in college use PFF. It is a reference. That they use it, I think, for checking other rosters and sort of trying to have a feel for maybe another opinion on a guy for a team you're about to play. But if you look at the PFF stuff, they're not high, and that was what Beamer was referencing. I think there was an article this week from the State referencing South Carolina's O-line and pass pro not being very good. Now, dude, some of the pass pro stuff kind of relates to what we were talking about in the running game a little bit as well. But yeah. ECU gave no whats. Like they're bringing cover zero, like 6-man, like we're just going to bring the house and live with the results. Like it looked like me playing PlayStation back in the day, where you just do the little double A-gap blitz where you just send the linebackers straight at the quarterback. That was sort of how they called the game, and we knew they would be aggressive, but to me it was maybe even more aggressive than I thought. Some teams are going to copy that. I don't know if other teams are going to be willing to be quite as aggressive as ECU was with some of that stuff, but are there ways to combat that? Yes. Did South Carolina always necessarily do as good a job as they needed to with that? No. But is that always on the offensive line? Certainly not. So there is nuance, I think, is what Beamer was getting to. And is this O-line going to have to be much better? I think absolutely yes. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I have noticed Beamer does not like when people and maybe I'm being, in my opinion, it seems like Beamer does not like when people just take an issue and then sort of just have like a black and white answer to it or opinion on it. Oh, the offensive line is awful. Well, let's have the conversation and have the nuance about it. Does the offensive line need to be better? Yes. But is it all completely the offensive line's fault? Absolutely not. We talked about the tight ends, needing to do more in the running game against Eastern Illinois. I thought the tight ends, especially on that outside zone down the stretch, blocked very, very well. Dude, I completed my rewatch last night. Jaheim Bell is a football player. Like I know we talk very highly of Jaheim on this show quite a bit coming into the year, but man, there were some plays where he's just hammering his guy down the field. Like he has him locked up and he is driving him 5, 8, 10 yards down the field. So there were some improvements in the blocking department that were in some of the areas we talked about after week 1, I think.
Yeah, and that outside zone play is a great point. The tight ends are really, really important on that play because they're obviously setting the edge. You're seeing them, sometimes cut off a guy or even double a guy and then move on to the next one. So they're kind of doubling a guy and then climbing up to the next level. Thinking about one play, Nick Muse did it amazingly on one of the plays where Juju McDowell, if you're kind of thinking about it from the screen, he was going from left to right on your screen. And, down there, pinned a guy, doubled him, came off at just the right time and pinned another guy in. And really set the edge for Juju McDowell in one of those runs. And you're right, Bell showing that he can do a little bit of everything. And I thought the tight ends definitely played well, which is important when they're running that outside zone run, and really important at any point in the run game, because especially when teams are devoting extra defenders to the line of scrimmage to combat the Gamecocks run, it's going to be key for those guys to play well.
No doubt, man. So we'll see. And like a point we were trying to make yesterday, man, they could improve everything we're talking about this week, and it may just not be clear this week because you're facing such a tough opponent. This Georgia front is going to make a lot of people look iffy. So it's going to be interesting to try to sort through that this week. Real quick, before we get rolling anymore, Chris, you want to tell everybody about our good friends at Dead Soxy? Hey, Chris, you're muted.
Wow. Make sure you check out the guys at Dead Soxy, DeadSoxy.com. You see it there if you're on the stream on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, the college line of Spurs socks, or you can check out a lot of different designs that they have in their boardroom dress socks, their athletic socks, no shows, patented node slip technology, and very soft feel. Comfortable socks, men's and women's for any occasion. DeadSoxy.com, and check this out, 25% off your order at DeadSoxy.com if you use the promo code Cocky.
Buttery soft feel.
You said it today, not me, so I'll let you take the.
Well, somebody else in our comments said it too. Trey, I think. Hey, John wants to know, do we have a Georgia D-line versus SC O-line weight comparison? Good question, John. I don't have one in front of me. I'll tell you this. It's not like South Carolina gives up a lot of poundage to many teams. I mean, it is a true SEC-sized defense or offensive line for South Carolina. Now, I will say this. Georgia's nose guard, who Beamer actually referenced one of his crazy plays he made on Saturday, Jordan Davis, is a freak of nature. He's, 340 pounds, is out there chasing down players on the perimeter. He, as they say, Chris, he's built different.
He is. And I remember that guy out of high school, Wes, because you remember when South Carolina was recruiting Rick Sandage, he was a buddy of Jordan Davis. I think they didn't play at the same high school, but knew each other, taught during the process and everything. I think I remember Jordan Davis being at Rick Sandage's announcement ceremony, actually. So
I remember that too.
Yeah. So Jordan, a huge dude, and man, he has developed. I mean, some people, there was a thought that maybe he was an offensive lineman in college. He has played nose guard. He has played, nose guard, and he's a nose guard. He's done an excellent job developing. And yeah, I mean, the thing that stands out about those guys, the size, yes, but just the speed and athleticism and skill level up front is really something. And you're right, man. The SCO line, we don't have that I don't have that comparison, Wes, in front of me. But you don't look at South Carolina's offensive line and say those guys look a little undersized. They're not. I mean, you got Justin Turnitine, you got Jalen Nichols beside him. The only guy that might be considered, I guess, undersized in the traditional sense is maybe Javon Gwynn. He's a little on the quote-unquote shorter size, but a powerful guy, right, that has weight on him. He's not 6'5", 330, but a guy that has that guard size, So he might be the only one that you would consider undersized in that traditional sense.
So we were talking about PFF a second ago. I pulled up the numbers so far, and the PFF numbers, again, I don't always agree with them, but they do. I like that they sort of can give you a little more detailed look. It's an easy way to see how many times was a guy targeted from a defensive back standpoint, how many receptions were made against him. From a pass rush standpoint, they have some really unique metrics where you can see, how many snaps did a guy have where he was a pass rusher, how many times did he get there, how many pressures did he get. The actual grades, can go different ways. Chris, this one I feel like you'll probably get. defense through 2 games. And the thing I do like about PFF is it sort of does reward consistency. So like if you were an 85 grade for the first 2 games, your overall grade isn't an 85. Like over time, it actually rewards the fact that you are the best performing player. By PFF through 2 games, which guy that's like played a lot do you think is the highest graded, best graded on defense?
JJ and Igbare, I would say.
Yes, ding, ding, ding. Pretty. That one I feel like matches the eye test as well. Like makes sense. Second is Cam Smith, which if you think about it, man, Cam has sort of, if he can ever get rid of the just little extra excitement after a play, then Cam has had a really good start to the year.
Well, I think about Cam. So a couple things that, and I don't want to say they were surprising, right? Like before Cam went down with the foot injury, think back to the spring. I go back even to the spring. We heard from several people that he had a really good spring, and which was important because the feeling was with all the questions in the secondary, and some of them are still, I would say, there, Wes, but those guys have overperformed even relative to the competition, I think, through 2 weeks. It was Cam is very needed in the secondary. They're going to be relying on him, and he has performed very well in the spring. So he carried it over, missed time in preseason, attacked his rehab, and he's done a good job. Yes, needs to cool it on the extracurricular, but I mean, tackling, he's done a really good job being physical and tackling. And then I think about, he made 2 huge plays in the ECU game. Perfect position. The play that he got, I think one of the flags on, that's the one where he knocked the ball away from the guy like twice, right? But, just great instincts with how he was able to knock the ball away. So that's impressive. Wes, where is our guy Brad Johnson, though, on that list? That's one I'm curious about because he has been very productive in terms of pass rush, particularly from that will linebacker spot.
Yes, excellent question. By the way, did you catch I didn't catch this live. I caught it in the replay. Later on in one of Cam Smith's pass breakups, which he had, I think, 3 pass breakups in the game, which is impressive. He had another one down the field and it was on the South Carolina sideline, and he made the pass breakup. And Clayton White was on the sideline, and Clayton just casually and calmly was just like grabbed Cam and sort of escorted him.
I did see that. Yeah.
Kind of like, all right, man, good play, but like get away from him.
Let's just go ahead and shield him away. Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was actually hilarious after what we had seen earlier. By the way, and I'm going to answer your question. I think worth noting, man, I know you and I talked to some of the same people out there as well, but has the praise for the job that Clayton White has been doing, it's to the extent that I think it's worth mentioning. I know we're 2 games into his tenure, but I feel like we're hearing that everywhere. Like everybody that's been around Clayton White, it's not just the on the field. We all know the results have been good, but I think the feeling around the program is like, man, this guy is the real deal. He's very sharp. The players love playing for him. The play, and I know you had Shirai Golightly talk about it a bit in his piece. By the way, go check that out on Gamecock Central. But what they sort of schemed up on that play where they ended up taking both pass rushers, both their edge guys, and right before the snap, they shifted them into basically like A-gap blitzers and ended up that's what got Sterling completely free. He's had some really neat stuff, I feel like, from a schematic standpoint. You and I talked about, are we going to see that NASCAR package at some point? Did you notice we haven't really seen that to like the way Brad Long did it, or the Rabbits package it was back then at South Carolina? Did you notice the one play though where they did have 3 edge guys on the field, and they had Jordan Strong as a stand-up. I guess Muschamp called it the spinner guy, where it's like a pass rush guy is lined up as a middle linebacker. and he looked like he was actually spying the quarterback in this play. But did you notice that they've slowly – I think there's a lot in the back pocket as far as different little pass rush wrinkles that I think they're slowly actually deploying, if that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, and there's certainly, especially given the personnel, there's room for continuing to add things on and creativity. And that has been an interesting one, Wes, that we've seen different personnel deployed in different ways. I don't know if we've seen, like you said, that true rabbits type of package. And maybe this is just a theory. I don't know if Clayton White's going to address it directly in a press opportunity, but, maybe one of the reasons is they feel like Brad Johnson as a will backer is really, Wes, almost like an extra rush end at times, especially with the way that they've used him. Even if you're in your regular package, you got two pass rushers that you feel good about on the edge. Zach Pickens has done a really good job of pushing the pocket and occupying space. He caused Holton Ahlers some problems to where he had to move around and right into an oncoming pass rusher. Brad Johnson's done a great job of adding on to those pressure packages, because if a running back stays in to block, he's then been coming in and he has caused some serious problems too. Brad Johnson has in those packages. So, another added thing to think about is if you're in 3rd, 6, 3rd and 7, 8, your teams can still run the ball. More often than not, they're going to pass it. Maybe you feel like you're in better position to defend the run if that does come up. But just a theory, not anything I know for sure as far as that goes.
I think they've done a good job of disguising what they want to do when they've really needed to as well. I mean, there was a play later on. I think it was in ECU's final offensive drive on 3rd down, and they were almost in. It was almost, for a moment, it looked like the old. You remember for a little stretch, teams were doing like the amoeba defensive front, where it's like everybody's standing up type thing.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know where they're coming from. For a split second, if I hope I'm remembering right, y'all, I think it was the final 3rd down for ECU, where South Carolina, after tying the game, got the ball back, and it was 3rd down, and they looked like they were bringing an all-out, just a 6-man rush, and then at the last second, they dropped out into zone. ECU completes it underneath. Jalen Foster, several other guys rallied to the football, made the tackle, got the offense the ball back. So I think they've done a good job too, Chris, of mixing up when to be aggressive, but then when you're sitting back, you don't just sit back to where you show that pre-snap. They've done a good job of showing pressure, then sitting back, or trying to sit back and then send pressure to where you're not just broadcasting to your opponent what exactly you're trying to do. And this is not, as good as the guys have been, man, let's be honest, this is not a 4- and 5-star loaded defense, but they're playing fast, they're playing hard, they're playing within the scheme. There's a very talented defensive front, and the other guys are sort of playing, I would say, within what they're asked to do in this scheme so far.
You're right. And, on top of that, what your example on the disguise and everything, Sherrod pointed this one out as well. And by the way, if you have not seen Sherrod Golightly, former Spur linebacker, made a lot of plays for the Gamecocks in his career, really smart football mind. He's done a breakdown each week of the big defensive plays. Latest one up on GamecockCentral.com right now, so go check that out if you're a subscriber. But Sherrod pointed out that on Darius Rush's interception, my original intent was I said, Sherrod, tell me about Darius's technique here, because he played it really well. And he pointed out that was also a disguise. South Carolina showed, press man at the line, and they actually backed out of that, and they kind of bailed out to the sticks because it was 3rd and 9, I think it was. He bails and then reads the quarterback and is able to go and make an outstanding play on the football. So, they have disguised. They've moved some things at the end. And really, Wes, if you look at some of the big defensive plays in that game, some of it was truly because East Carolina had some confusion pre-snap or at the snap as to maybe what they anticipated coming. So when you mix that plus South Carolina's ability as the game went on to pressure the quarterback and to move the pocket and to push the pocket, that caused some issues. East Carolina did not do a lot in that game. They had the one explosive play early. They had the positive field position and ended up scoring a touchdown. Other than that, they didn't do a whole heck of a lot, offensively in the game. And South Carolina's defense deserves credit for that.
Yeah, and great play call by ECU to start the game, I guess, with the shot play there, the trick play. But the other score was off of the Joyner. The other touchdown was off the Joyner fumble that wasn't even really a fumble, if you ask me. So, yeah, defense has been awesome. I did not forget your question. Brad Johnson right now. So I'm going to take out – let's see. Let's make it just the people that have played a lot as well, because the other thing about this is it mixes in people that have played like 5 snaps, which isn't really fair. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so Johnson, 5th highest rated defensive guy of the guys for South Carolina that have played quite a bit. The guys that are ahead of him, Enigbare, Cam Smith, Jordan Birch still way up there with a 90.8 grade. Jordan Strong, a 78.8 grade. Brad Johnson, a 73.3 grade. So, and you're still talking about some guys that have played, a good bit, but not near as many snaps as Brad. So among starters, if you include Cam as a starter, which he actually hasn't been starting, but JJ, Cam, and then Brad among the starters. So I know Chris is actually the founding member of the Brad Johnson fan club, but Brad Johnson, dude, he looks comfortable at linebacker, man. Like he's coming to his own. He's slimmed down a little bit, I think, back into – for so long they were trying to, like, put muscle on him, I feel like, to get him ready to play that edge spot. And I think he's settled in, man. You got to be happy, too. Brad's always been a great kid, even going back to, interviewing him in high school and stuff. So he's a good interview, too. Last week, he's not one of these guys that gets up there and just sort of gives you player speak. He speaks his mind a little bit.
He does, and there's several guys like that on the team, which is, that's one reason why it's been cool to see some of their personalities and stuff like that this year. But talking to Brad, had a great conversation with him at the preseason media day about a lot of stuff, mainly with that transition to linebacker and just how that's been. And he, of course, had high praise for Clayton White, who's his position coach and his defensive coordinator. So, plenty more challenges coming, I think, for this defense, for that linebacking core. They're going to be tasked, I think, in particular, as the schedule moves forward, with covering some guys in space that are going to be tough covers. Just the way that Georgia will have some this weekend. Think about some of the players that Florida is going to deploy, Clemson. There's going to be some tough asks with that kind of stuff, which it is for really any linebacking core, but especially for a guy in Brad that, is still making that transition. But he does look comfortable, and he has really, really helped and shined from a pass rushing perspective.
Yeah, and before I forget to make this point, man, how big has it been for South Carolina as far as this pass rush goes? And again, we've talked about this several times. We all thought and were projecting the defensive line to play really well and the pass rush to be really good. But as we've seen, you never quite know if it's going to be the same that you expect when you go play real people, when you go play opponents, as opposed you can be wrong by hearing feedback from your O-line versus your D-line or your corners versus your receivers. We've all been fooled by that in the past at times. It can happen. But this defensive front, man, to me, Chris, the difference this past week is that it's not just a guy like Enigbare. How many times when Ehlers either got sacked or was pressured into either making a bad throw or throwing the ball away or whatever it is, how many times was it not just that one guy had defeated a blocker? It was that he's dodging this person, and then he's getting rushed from another lane by this guy up front. I mean, he's getting basically he's dodging 3 or 4 guys. I mean, dude, by the way, lost in the shuffle a bit. MJ Webb got in the game a little bit and was pushing the pocket as well. I think MJ and Boogie are sort of alongside Tonka, the next guy in the rotation. And MJ's kind of one of those forgotten guys. Feels like he's been here forever. Former 4-star guy, has played O-line, D-line, O-line, back and forth. Good for him, though. He was in there. I remember a play in particular where he didn't get credit, I don't think, but was pushing his guy back into the line, and there were 3 or 4 guys. It was almost at times like there was kind of a friendly fight to see who was going to get to collect the sack. And I'm here to tell y'all, man, Jordan Strachan, I think this guy's a stud. Like, I know he's not a starter. I know it's going to be hard to pass, Enigbare or Sterling, but when I watch him, the way he moves, he looks like an NFL pass rusher to me. So that unit, if nothing else this year, man, that unit is really fun to watch, and that the talent there is legitimate.
Yeah, it is. Lots of guys stepping up, stepping forward. It was good to see MJ Webb, a guy that was in the 2017 recruiting class, just like Brad Johnson, who's been around a while, get rewarded. Boogie Huntley has continued to get plenty of playing time, especially with Rick Sandage out. You're right. I mean, Strachan is the guy that when you see him on the screen, he's in the game because he has kind of a unique frame and body type. He's long. He's put on weight, so he doesn't look, thinner like he did at Georgia State. Now he's 240 pounds, something like that. Looks great and moves really well. I mean, he's just got that natural agility and kind of bend around the edge. They put him back there, like you said earlier, Wes, at a linebacker type of spot, standing up on the edge or even behind, kind of over the defensive line. So, yeah, I mean, and that's when we talk about South Carolina having that kind of legitimate 2 deep, it really stands out at the edge positions where you've got Enigbare and Sterling, and then your next group you can roll in there is Jordan Birch and Jordan Strachan.
Something about that number 7 rushing off the edge too, man. It just brings back memories. So, all right, y'all. I guess that's gonna about do it. Chris, you got any final thoughts on the press conferences from today, man? By the way, I just so y'all know, if y'all want to watch or listen to Shane Beamer, just posted it on our YouTube while we were doing the show. So that's always youtube.com/GamecockCentral. If you're not subscribed to us there, please go hit the subscribe button. It's completely free. We have a lot of content on there, Chris. The last year or so, we've had a lot of content on there, but it's been even more this season. Kendall Smith, our intern, has done an outstanding job of posting additional videos than what we used to have. And I got a feeling that that's something we want to continue to add content ideas to. So be on the lookout for that, Chris. I'm excited about what we have going there. And if you're watching on YouTube now, hit that like button because I do think it helps our analytics, and hit the subscribe button as well. But any closing thoughts so far, man?
No closing thoughts for me, man. Good show. Thanks to everybody for listening, watching as always, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Yes, I will not be here tomorrow. We will maybe we'll get Colin on, or maybe we'll get maybe this will be a good week to get our friends from the Georgia rival site on to talk some ball. They do quite a bit of YouTube Live, videos, stuff like that as well, man. So maybe it would be a good time to get them in. Travis says, shout out to Colin Taylor for the TikTok. That's actually Kendall's doing. So Kendall, unless Colin's posted something since yesterday or Monday that I didn't see, that would be Kendall Smith that was doing the TikTok. We'll have more on TikTok from what I understand if you're into that at the Georgia game as well. So appreciate y'all as always. Chris will be here tomorrow, Wednesday. I'll be back on Thursday, and we'll see y'all then.